Welcome back to the Bitcoin Layer. I'm Joe Consorti. Today we're here with Felix Maradiaga, the president of the Nicaraguan Freedom Foundation and the leader of the Nicaragua Opposition Party. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for your invitation.
Absolutely. So today at the Bitcoin Policy Summit, there are a lot of people who are talking about human rights related stuff. Obviously on the show, we usually talk about Bitcoin macro. Sometimes we delve into geopolitics, and today is one of those days. Obviously Bitcoin in the West for us, the main utility of Bitcoin for people like us in the United States is wealth preservation, but elsewhere it has a lot of other utilities, right? Where human rights, where human freedoms may be far lower than what's here. And you hosted a keynote earlier today where you kind of touched upon those topics. What are you working on currently?
Well, as you mentioned, I lead a foundation, Nicaraguan Freedom Foundation, Fundación para la Libertad de Nicaragua. I am currently one of many other Nicaraguans forced into exile by the Sandinista dictatorship of Daniel Ortega. So Nicaragua, for those who are connecting to the show now, is a country of Central America that it's suffering one of the most severe dictatorship in the hemisphere. I presented a keynote in which basically I showed data from Freedom House, an organization I'm also a trustee, that has shown that for the last 18 years, the world has gone into a democratic deficit, and Nicaragua is one of those countries. In fact, looked based on aggregate data for the last 10 years, Nicaragua is the country on planet Earth that has lost the greatest numbers in the Freedom Index at Freedom House. So I usually explain this by saying that Nicaragua is a sort of the North Korea in a tropical version. And when we talk about lack of freedoms, we are not talking only about the lack of free and fair elections. We're also talking about financial repression, persecution of your asset on your bank privacy, confiscation, and that has been the case that I presented today. So once again, one of the things that we're trying to do, broadly speaking, is to reestablish the capacity of the democratic opposition to pursue a democratic future for Nicaraguans. But as part of that process, we are also dealing with financial repression. And that's what brings me to this Bitcoin policy discussion.
Hold that thought. The Bitcoin Layer is sponsored by River. River is our Bitcoin exchange of choice. Why is that? Well, they have best-in-class Bitcoin services. You can securely buy Bitcoin with zero fees when you set up recurring orders, and you can have peace of mind knowing that your Bitcoin is held in one-to-one multi-sig cold storage custody. It's not lent out. You can withdraw it at any time. And if you need help, they have US-based phone supports for all of their clients. And also, they recently introduced a feature called River Link, which allows you to text Bitcoin to anybody, and it can be claimed to any wallet. This makes it easier than ever to orange pill your friends, your family members, pay people when you go out for dinner, give a gift, etc. Try them out today at river.com/TBL and get up to $100 when you sign up and buy Bitcoin. And now on with the show. Fantastic. So talk about some of the things that have happened to you as the leader of this movement, right? I can't imagine it's been easy in a country like that where you're facing such severe opposition. Talk to us about some of the difficulties that you've had trying to, bring more freedom to Nicaragua.
Well, Ortega came back into power in 2007. We had 16 years of a democratic experiment. In 1990, the country started a new democratic process. So this is a little bit of history. So we had 10 years of civil war between 1979 and 1989. We had free and fair elections in 1990. But Ortega of the Sandinista front came back into power in 2007. When he came back into power, he promised that he was going to be different. But one of my arguments, and we've shown abundant documentation of that, is that with the collaboration of many naive organizations and individuals, Ortega was able to reestablish a dictatorship that I would say it's even more severe than previous autocracies that we had. So now, in my personal experience, I come from both the entrepreneurial world and the private sector. I was amongst the first people that were formally charged by Ortega. So I was accused of treason for my international advocacy. Originally in 2018, I faced a trial. I was forced into exile in 2018. Then I went back to Nicaragua in 2019, and when I went back to Nicaragua, I was placed in in arbitrary detention and then transferred to a maximum security prison for 611 days. Then, alongside other 221 political prisoners, we were deported from Nicaragua to the United States, which is also illegal because the deportation laws do not apply to Nicaraguans. But I was deprived of my nationality, so I was declared stateless. I was also deprived of my savings, my private property. Everything was confiscated. Bank accounts of all my close relatives as well as their property. And this is something that is not limited only to me. Also, regular citizens who collaborated in the peaceful protest by just raising a flag, by joining the nonviolent movement. They've also become a target of the regime. So my focus in this particular conference is the financial repression, but the perversity, the malevolence of the Ortega dictatorship, of course, goes way beyond only financial repression.
Excellent. So let's hone in on financial repression then. For our viewers at home, obviously, we are thankfully, and we have viewers in 109 countries, subscribers in many, many more, I believe, and not many of us can say that we've experienced financial repression. I know particularly here in the United States, not many of us have to worry about our bank accounts being frozen, for example. What is it like in Nicaragua compared to the United States when it comes to financial repression?
Well, Nicaragua is an extreme case. It's interesting because we heard stories from many other parts of the world, and precisely because Ortega has full control of the country, we are geopolitically speaking a very small country. So Ortega has been able to do things or to get away with things that in many other parts of the world will be more difficult. So the first phase of the financial repression had to do particularly with violation of bank privacy, had to do with expropriation of private property, and what we call fiscal terrorism, which is a term broadly used in Latin America when systems, in this case Ortega, but we've seen this in Venezuela, we've seen this in Bolivia, we've seen this in many other parts of the world, in which central governments use taxation as a weapon against those who they regard as their dissidents. So that's something that in Nicaragua has resulted in the bankruptcy of a number of companies that have donated money to human rights organizations, that have donated money to freedom fighters or to opposition political parties. But things then move to the next phase, which is basically using banking transactions and remittances transactions to identify those who participated in the peaceful protest movement, which led to about 1,700 people being arbitrarily detained simply for receiving some payments. And I provided some examples for simple things such as catering in a libertarian meeting, or a librarian or a bookstore for selling books, or a printing shops for printing T-shirts. Right now, there's the case of Adela, a lady who basically had a printing shop, and she printed some T-shirts with the Nicaraguan flag, and she is facing an 8-year sentence for receiving a payment for those T-shirts. So it are things that I can only describe as Kafkian, that can only describe as completely surreal, but unfortunately, they're very real. They are the lives of people, 325 of them killed by the Ortega regime, 130 of them in prison today. I was one of them. And most of these people, as the case of Mr. Victor Ticay, who's another example I used, a journalist who basically took pictures of a religious event that was not authorized by the regime, and he was also arrested. So as we see, we have had some progress in a number of other areas as freedom fighters. I'll use one example. We've had, for example, success in trying to counter propaganda and disinformation in social media. But there's one area in which dictators around the world, and Ortega is only one example, in which they have full control, and our capacity to counter that is close to known. And I provided some examples of that, which is basically the financial repression. Why? Because dictators control central banks, they control the tax systems, they control the databases of all the remittances and international money transfers, and they can use that data to politically target people.
And I think to some degree that's also a warning for our viewers at home, because at the end of the day, we're all beholden to the same kind of thing. In the United States, it doesn't happen as often, but with certain political dissidents, Edward Snowden, obviously chief among them, Julian Assange as well. If you do go against the regime, then of course there are consequences, particularly financially. What is the role of Bitcoin in allowing citizens to kind of absolve themselves from this financial repression? What is the role of Bitcoin in Nicaragua?
Yes. So before that, let me quickly connect with my talk. So my talk basically argued that dictatorships are becoming more sophisticated. So technology is a huge part of the repression. So dictatorships around the world are no longer the idea of the classical authoritarian regime that we have in mind. I mean, the tanks or men with military fatigue controlling a country. I'm not saying that we're not seeing that, but that's not the main tool. It's no longer the classical military machinery of repression. They're using surveillance, they're using face recognition, they're using highly sophisticated mechanisms to hack into your bank account. They're using what I call the minority report mindset. So even before you become a freedom fighter, even before you become an activist, they will look at your social media behavior and target you. That's what's happening in Nicaragua. So people can be banned from re-entering the country. Let's say you're a tourist from Nicaragua. And this is actual cases. We've documented thousands of cases of people that went abroad as tourists, business trips, and they want to re-enter Nicaragua. They're not allowed. Well, because their social media signals in a way that they're not sympathetic to the regime. So just imagine a country like that. It's completely Orwellian. So what role does Bitcoin play over here? So I first want to make a point that precisely because technology is weaponized by dictatorship, we need to use technology for good to fight malevolence, right? And we have been using Bitcoin not because we see a benefit in storing value from a profit perspective, not to say that that's important or not, but because it works to channel resources to freedom fighters and to human rights defenders. So in very practical terms, one of the big problems is that if you are clearly labeled by the regime as a dissident, it will be close to impossible to you to receive a remittance. That's a money transfer from abroad from a donor. It will be close to impossible to fundraise for your political movement. It will be impossible to buy a plane ticket, for example, or for someone to pay for a plane ticket for you. And it will be very hard for you to have an online account to access internet at home. So those are the very practical things that we're trying to bring originally to Nicaragua, but thanks to the very visionary attitude of Human Rights Foundation, we are now expanding this to many other parts of the world.
Excellent. So I think we'll close out on this. What are you doing? What is the Human Rights Foundation doing in order to make sure that dictatorships like this don't fester, they don't metastasize, and other countries don't adopt them? What's going on today, not just with Bitcoin, but through all aspects of what you do to try to enable human freedom for as much people as possible?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's well beyond our individual capacity as partners of HRF, for example. But there's one very important thing that we're doing, and I'll use this opportunity to emphasize on that, is building the democratic ecosystems. And what do I mean by that? Dictators, they work together, they learn about their repression tactics, they finance each other, but freedom fighters around the world and like-minded people who love individual freedom, who actually want to have free and open societies that respect individual human dignity, sometimes we don't collaborate among us. I mean, we make ask the question, what does it hurt for me for someone in Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Zimbabwe, Russia to be oppressed? So the answer is that the more we collaborate and we build networks of what we call democratic solidarity, the weaker the capacity of these evil networks to suppress your freedoms. So one of the basic things we're doing, and our largest and most, I think, important project is called the World Liberty Congress, is building a global network of freedom fighters. We learn from each other. We see what's working and what's not. In fact, we learn through freedom fighters in other parts of the world the enormous benefits of Bitcoin to help us send resources to freedom fighters at the front lines. So in a nutshell and in conclusion, nobody's fully free if other human around the world is oppressed. So building networks, educating yourself, protecting your individual freedoms, sharing your freedom. I know it's said a lot, but freedom is not free. So sharing and protecting your own freedom and get educated. I think that those are the things that you could do.
Excellent. And to close out the show here, where can people go to get educated? Where can people go to find more from you? And
I will advise you to go to worldlibertycongress.org for those who want to know more about our work.
Excellent. Felix, thanks so much for sitting down with me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And make sure you turn on post notifications so you know when we upload. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video. It helps quite a bit. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. And once again, a special thanks to River for sponsoring not only this show, but all of our shows here at the Bitcoin Layer. They are our Bitcoin exchange of choice. You can securely buy Bitcoin with zero fees on recurring orders, have peace of mind thanks to their one-to-one multi-sig cold storage custody, and withdraw at any time. And if you need any help, they have US-based phone support for all clients. And they have a feature called River Link, which allows you to send a Bitcoin over a text message that can be claimed to any wallet. It's never been easier to orange pill your friends, family members, give a gift, pay somebody else for dinner. You guys, check out River today using our link, river.com/TBL, and get up to $100 when you sign up and buy Bitcoin. Once again, thanks to River, and thank you for watching to the end. We'll see you soon.